Okay, I finally got these joints looking respectable, but I tell you, I'm ready to pitch that saw. I don't know what's going on with that thing, but I can't seem to get consistent mitering. And as I said, that's my father-in-law's saw. He beats the thing around, or not he personally, but his guys, my brothers-in-law and the other guy that works with him. You know, the thing rides around in the truck or whatever, and they use it to cut aluminum extrusions and rough lumber. And anyway, the other thing I'm fighting is it's got a 12-inch blade on it, and the wider the diameter of the blade, the more possibility you have of flex. So I actually had to turn these miters over and cut them upside down, because what I was getting at is, as the blade comes down here at the beginning of the miter, it starts to cut and then kind of wobble sideways as it goes through there. So I was getting a gap here. Now, any gapping, if I cut them from the bottom side up, any gapping will be towards the bottom, won't be really noticed. The other thing is, I changed the blade to one of my panel saw blades. It's got a heavier plate, but the tooth geometry isn't quite made for that kind of a saw, and the cut isn't quite as it should be. But anyway, I've got them looking pretty good here. Unfortunately, in all that angle niggling, now I have a piece that is not going to make an 18-inch diameter tabletop. It's going to have to be a little bit less, which is not a big deal, except 18 inches was what I was shooting to make it. It just means I'm going to have to adjust the outer part, the outer radius, and make it a little smaller. Won't really affect the look of the table much, and I'm only maybe an 1/8 to 3/16 smaller, but it's kind of disappointing when you shoot for something and you miss because something didn't work out on the miters. It's actually 17 and 13/16, which I'll probably end up, I don't know, 17.5 or something. So this border will be a little bit smaller than it was. I could try to crowd it out as far as I can. 17 3/4 would have been nice. And I may still try for that. It's just going to be nip and tuck out here at the corners, or the points where the radius nearly touches tangent to the outside of the piece. Okay, there's the inside radius. That's pretty critical. I needed to make sure that everything was cleaned up there. And like I said, the outside, I can tweak it a little bit, even though it's not what I wanted. I can still make it work, and it'll still look good. Just readjust this here a little bit. Now, one of the bad things about the stick pan, I'm going to run this real close to the camera. You see that fuzz right there on the tip? That ink collects little particles of dust and kind of clogs the tip. There, it's writing again here. You can see why I like to use a stick pan. Look at that crisp line, even on this dark wood. I've got a nice crisp line, and the other thing is I don't have to worry about this line. Sometimes, oops, I'm off the end a little bit there. That's not good. Let me run this out here. Yeah, I've got a little bit more on this side. Actually, it's not quite centered. I've got a little bit more here than there. Excuse me. So I should probably back this up. What I could do is just turn this piece over. It doesn't matter which side. This is going to be the top side, but it doesn't matter which side I mark the lines on. Let's flip this over here and see if I can get it a little bit better centered. Technically, if I line these miters up with the miter lines I've got underneath, it should be right where it's supposed to be. And I probably should have started with the outside radius, but I had it set for the inside, so I went with that. This is how you check. See, it still needs to come this way just a hair. It's just kissing the edge there. It's still off down here. It's just going to slip off the edge. I'm just going to move this in a hair more. As I'm doing this, I'll keep talking. As I was talking about a hair this and a hair that, woodworkers kind of have our own vernacular on small units of measure. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. But I'll give you a few examples. Some people will say it's a titch off, it's a smidgen off, it's a hair off. And I used to work with my dad's cousin. He was about the same age as my dad, maybe just a little older. But he was quite the character, or is. He's still living. And Ed used to tell me, you know, I like working with you because that way when something goes wrong, I have somebody to blame. Of course, if everything goes right, then I'll take the credit. The other thing was, one day we were working on a deck railing, and he had put the top cap on and looked down underneath it, and he raised himself back up and he said, "I'm just a Bisley high." And I looked at him and said, "What in the world's a Bisley?" And he said, looked at me with scorn, mock scorn, and said, "Supposedly a carpenter doesn't know what a Bisley is." So we all have our little expressions of small units of measure. Now I've got this here set up that it all fits inside the frame. Now I'll back this off again to the inside edge, run that out, and this frame will be ready. Then I'm going to have to play with this other cherry frame, which I am not looking forward to after the disaster that this was. By the way, the struggles you see here should not be reflected in the final product. In other words, I should have these things pretty well worked out. And Lisa's having her husband put all these videos, burn them to a CD, so you will be able to watch the agony and the joy of woodworking. And you'll know, as you look at the piece, all the different things that went on as I was working on this. This is ready for more machining. What I will do next is cut this out, and I'm not going to just leave this clamped on here. Now I can't glue this on, although it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea to do that as I'm thinking out loud here. I could technically glue these joints across the corner here so I can machine this and not worry about the thing coming apart. Now I can't talk. What I was intending to do originally was run some screws in here through the corners, but I'm almost thinking that it might be better if I would just take a dab of glue here and here and here and here on this outside area that's going to be wasted out. and run that through. Now I will have to be a little bit careful, and the reason why is I have to get these back apart. This is me thinking out loud again and working out the solutions in my head and vocalizing them at the same time. That would be a great idea, except for one small problem, and that would be I have to get these apart again so I can slide that panel in, and this would have to be cut off in order for me to get in here. And I was intending to use this here area as a clamping surface, and like I said, I was going to 4-square clamp this, which means I'll take 2 bar clamps, probably at least 2, run them on the underside this way, and then 2 more on the top side and run them this way. That way that should pinch that joint together nicely. I haven't told you yet how I intend to fasten these together. I'll get to that later, but anyway, that's my thought process is there. It would still be a better deal if I could glue this, but maybe I'll just screw that so I can reverse it. The other thought I had was to take a piece of plywood, at least for the routing scheme, and I could, this might even be better too, leave these pinch clamps on here, take a piece of plywood that's almost the same size as this, and what I'll have to do is see if that bit, if the bearing or the nut that holds that bit on there, once I have this set up where it needs to be, will stick up past here. If it doesn't, I could just screw a piece of plywood down here through these corners and hold it together, and then I can take these pinch clamps off. That would hold everything where it's supposed to be while I machined it. Then I could just back the screws off and go from there. These pinch clamps might hold this good enough that I can run my jigsaw around here, and then I'll have to sand it also, but I may put a couple screws in the corner just to keep these things from sliding. I don't want any sliding action going on there. I'm starting to ramble on here, so I'm going to shut the camera off. I'm going to get these pieces ready over here. I won't show you that. You've already seen how it's done here. And we'll go from there.